I'm here to see Kanni Wignaraja, head of the UNDP Asia Pacific region, to talk about something you use every day, digital technology.
Hey Paul,
Hi, Kanni.
welcome.
How are you?
How are you?
Nice to see you.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Nice to see you.
I'm fully vaccinated, so
As
if you are,
am I, yeah. Okay.
then I'm happy
Great.
to thank you so much for
A
coming in.
little bit of fresh air.
Yeah.
Take my mask off.
Did you just take the train in
I did.
today?
Yeah, I
Oh,
drove this morning.
okay. Wonderful.
It's fine.
And you're coming in from
my first business trip in
I see that you like tea.
I
That's
do.
your beverage of choice.
I'm not a coffee drinker, I guess.
And that's
So I know the
that's
theme is
fine.
coffee with Kanni, but I decided I wanted to come anyway just because I want to spend some time with you.
Wonderful. And you know, I'm from Sri Lanka, so
Yeah.
we can talk about tea. I mean, Ceylon tea for me, there's
Yeah.
nothing like a good cup of Ceylon tea. So
Right.
I'm good with it, and glad that you've got your
Yeah.
tea. Would you like a little bit of milk in it, or
No,
are you
I'm
good
fine.
this way?
I'm fine. I'm good.
You're a purist when it comes to your tea, then.
Yes. Exactly.
Very good. So I just wanted to touch base, Paul, on some of the work that, I mean, you've been doing this for a while, but I think the whole area of digital access and digitalization, right, the explosion that's underway right now, it's easier said than done, right? Because we're working in 36 countries in Asia Pacific, and not everyone has this access. And yet right now, if you don't, you are just getting thrown so far behind.
Basically, we have about half the world's population that is not yet accessing the internet, and the Asia and Pacific region is actually quite emblematic of the broader, connectivity divide. So, a little less than half of the population of the Asia and Pacific region are accessing the internet today. And as you know, the region is incredibly diverse. You have the most advanced economies on the planet alongside some less advanced economies, and so you see huge differences, right? So you look at a place like Singapore or South Korea, over 80% of their population is on the internet.
Yes.
But then if you look at a place like Pakistan or India or Bangladesh, or the Pacific Islands, less than 20% of the population is accessing the internet. It's become even more acute now with the COVID-19 pandemic globally, and especially impacting youth. So basically, children and youth. And you look around, you look globally. Basically, this is the biggest impact education that's ever occurred on the planet in history, right? And of course, it's impacting all children. And it's particularly impacting children in emerging markets because they don't have internet access at home.
Right.
So they're being sent home with the expectation that somehow they're going to get online and be able to do their schoolwork.
Yeah.
So if you live in a less developed economy, lower income economy, or you live in a rural area, or you're a girl, and you're in a low income household, oftentimes you'll see situations involving girls where the family has to make tough decisions, and often it's in favor of the boy or the boys in the family. So it might be that they can only afford one device that connects to the internet, and the boy gets to use it and the girl does not. She has to go out and in fact go start working in order to pay for that device, and she's not in school anymore because of that. Or the family can't afford to be online all the time, so they're rationing access to the internet, and so often they're making tough decisions around who gets to use it, and unfortunately, too often it's girls that get impacted by that.
Now here's an interesting story. I just saw this data point, which was fascinating. Talking with some leaders and community members in Pakistan recently, and I think this is so in much of South Asia. We're producing more women doctors than men. However, they're not coming into the labor market. Now, what the pandemic has done, because you're working from home, is these women are back through telemedicine, right? And so suddenly you have an opening there.
Yeah.
So there's, I guess, some places where one can even show the counterintuitive, if you wish. Is that something that?
Yeah, and I could definitely see that. And I think one of the challenges. I've just certainly experienced this in projects that I've been involved in, deploying broadband in rural communities, and safety issues are a big deal for for women and girls,
Right.
especially in rural areas. And if you can get them good connectivity at home or at work, they can be online and don't have to be out on the street
Right.
in the evening and that sort of thing.
Why isn't this happening in more parts of the world? Why is Asia Pacific still, as you said, in some countries 20, 30%?
I think the big challenge we face now is really in sort of what we would call the middle mile and last mile of a network. So really actually bringing the internet in that last, let's say, 10 kilometers to someone's home. And of course, if you look across Asia Pacific, there's a very large percentage of people who live at least 10 kilometers away from fiber.
Yeah.
So I think the big challenge now is figuring out what's the right mix of technologies and what are the right business models that will help enable that extension, that last 10 kilometers to people where they live.
Given we still want affordable access, right? For most private companies, this would not make business sense. So is that the best option? Is that a mix of a public-private enterprise that can provide that last mile to most people?
I think that we should rely on the private sector as much as possible.
Okay.
I think we should try to avoid as much as possible government intervening in the market.
Tell me a little bit about the invisible mile. I found that fascinating. What is it that we're not seeing, and what makes it invisible, and what can make it visible?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. First mile would be whatever the infrastructure is that sort of lands in the country.
Yeah.
The middle mile would be basically all the infrastructure that's within the country up until essentially the last mile.
Yeah.
And then the last mile is essentially that connection, whether it's a wireless connection or a fixed connection, to the customer.
Yeah.
And then the invisible mile is really all the other things that impact whether or not someone can have services available to them, whether the business model can work, and whether the customer can actually afford the service or it's relevant to that individual.
Okay.
So things like regulation, that's a critical issue. It's a huge issue for bringing new technologies into market, being able to go deploy services. Things like access to finance, so just and that's both for the operator as well as for the customer, and just their ability to be able to pay for things in a way that's comfortable for them.
What type of cost are we talking about?
So there have been estimates recently done of the cost of extending 4G mobile coverage to everyone in the world who doesn't have that coverage.
Okay.
And those estimates are essentially between $400 and $500 billion to bring that connectivity. And in most cases, it will be, what's called terrestrial network coverage using 4G mobile technologies. In some extreme cases, those estimates also include the cost of satellite connectivity in very remote areas where 4G coverage is just not going to work.
If you had to put your kind of the last dollar, if I might call it that, on a key investment that you feel bringing in the private sector, bringing in governments, where should UNDP really put its voice and its support behind?
So I would say the first area is regulation. Having a good legal and regulatory environment in which to operate in. And good regulation can really be the difference maker. So that's one example. That's number one. Number two, I think, is on access to financing. And I think there can be so many homegrown network providers, people who could provide internet access. You don't have to wait for some company to arrive from, based in Dubai to come to your country and, and set up a mobile operator or a telecom network. There are plenty of small companies that could be helped, but the biggest challenge they face is access to financing. And then the last area, which I think is going to be the hardest thing, is the adoption gap. Adoption and usage gap. And I think even in cases where you bring internet into a community, and even if you've figured out how to make it affordable, there's still going to be a third of the population that's not going to sign up. Even in the U.S., even in the U.S. where you have places where internet is widely available, a third of the population does not get online. And why is that? There's a lot of reasons. We brought up safety earlier. That's one reason. Yeah. Just relevance of the content, language barriers. A lot of the internet's in English, so what more can we do to make the internet into local language? digital skilling issues.
Yeah.
So that, there's a whole variety of those other issues. They're sort of like people think of them as the softer issues, but they're the hardest.
Right.
And I think that's I think even when we solve all these other things, we're still going to have to deal with that issue. And I think that's going to be the sort of the big emerging challenge, that there's more to be gained from a free and open internet. We know with some some conditions on that. We want to make sure that, again, like, we don't want children to be exposed to content they shouldn't see, and all. Give people the tools they need, but on an individual level. But I think overall we should try to make this free and open, and we should show the way. Show how this can be beneficial in so many ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lovely point to end on. Thank you, Paul. This was wonderful. It's one thing reading and writing a paper, and it's another thing to have a conversation. So I really, we look forward to sharing more of these ideas, and coming back to the fact that I'm so glad that you enjoy tea. And as I said, coming from Sri Lanka, to me, a tea drinker is very special.
All right, great.
So thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Appreciate it.